I started off my career in information technology. I always had passion for data security and data privacy governance. I had to take up trainings related to the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and the CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act, to further understand data governance. Flawless Nigeria Limited is a data protection compliance organization licensed by the Nigeria Data Protection Commission to assist businesses protect the data they collect from the public. We ensure that data controllers and data processors understand data protection. We assist businesses draft policies tailored to the information they collect from the public, like their privacy policy, the data subject consent form, the data subject withdrawal form, information security policies. And we also conduct vulnerability and penetration tests on their website and portals to ensure the safety of the data they host on such cloud platforms. Our clients include the Bureau of Public Enterprises, BPE, the National Youth Service Corps, Federal Housing Authority, Niger Delta Power Holding Company, and we're also licensed to carry out data protection for all microfinance banks in Nigeria and all stock brokerage firms. To learn more about Flawless Nigeria Limited, visit our website as displayed on your screen and also follow our social media handles displayed on your screen. With Flawless Nigeria Limited, we can build a data-protected society.
Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual training focused on explaining the new compliance guidance notice for data protection compliance in Nigeria. I'm Daniel Uba, your host for today's exciting live event. Before we get started, I would like to explain the importance of data protection. Data protection is important for several reasons because it helps individuals, the data subjects, have their identity remain private and confidential. It safeguards sensitive data such as name, BVN, health records, and other personal identifiable information from being accessed by unauthorized users. It also helps in maintaining robust data protection security measures as stated in the Data Protection Act for data controllers and data processors to put in their systems in order to ensure the safety of their records, both of the employees and the data subjects. The Data Protection Act 2023 also mandates organizations to implement specific measures to protect the data of data subjects. Compliance with the Data Protection Act not only help organizations avoid legal penalties, but also foster a culture of ethical ways of handling data subject records. Feel free to ask questions during the training by dropping comment on the chat box. So let's get started. So what is data protection compliance audit returns? It's an obligation placed on data controllers and data processors, encouraging them to be responsible when handling personal data. In simple terms, it's an annual external evaluation of an organization's adherence to the Nigeria Data Protection Act 2023 guidelines on data security safeguards. This assessment must be conducted by a licensed data protection compliance organization, DPCO. So we need to learn the compliance audit returns focus area. What this simply means is the areas the regulatory body, the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, NDPC, will be interested when evaluating the records of data controllers and data processors. So the key areas include awareness, capacity building, privacy policy, compliance directives to employee, contractors, and agents, availability of data protection officers, categories of personal data being processed by the data controller or the data processor clearly itemized. Also, technical measures for ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of personal data with focus on privacy by design and by default. Also, grievance redress mechanisms and a list of agents, contractors they've engaged, highlighting due diligence, training, and compliance with the Data Protection Act. So let's look at awareness. Awareness simply refers to raising the level of consciousness and understanding of both staff and third-party vendors about data privacy. So the regulatory body wants to see data controllers, data processors, evidencing the fact that there is a level of awareness on the part of their employees and their third-party processors. It also ensures that staff and third parties are informed and knowledgeable about the Nigeria Data Protection Act 2023, which will help them understand the obligations of data controllers, data processors, employees, and the data subjects. Everybody has obligations in the Data Protection Act. Take, for instance, a customer who has an account with a commercial bank has to take due diligence to ensure he or she does not disclose the PIN on the debit card or credit card. The organization in question, the commercial bank, also have to ensure that all records are protected from unauthorized users. And the third-party vendors they've engaged must also ensure that they've put in place adequate security measures so that the records they have will not be altered, either on transit or at rest. So when you talk about awareness, it simply means disseminating information to increase understanding and consciousness among staff, third-party vendors, data subjects through virtual training, flyers, infographic material, and on-premise training. So we go to capacity building. Now, capacity building refers to a formal recognized certification program. So there's a thin line between awareness and capacity building. So there are two different things. Capacity building refers to a formal and recognized certification program aimed at developing and strengthening the knowledge, skills, capabilities of individuals handling and safeguarding personal data. So you have to understand that just as you've evidenced that you've done awareness, you also need to evidence that you've done capacity building. So your capacity building should address key areas such as employees having knowledge on policy implementation. Take, for instance, password policy. You have to understand that employees need to know what is the password policy of the organization. What is the minimum password requirement? How often should I change my password? Should I store my password on sticky notes? So also technical skills, which will improve the IT department and staff on how to handle the storage and transmission of sensitive information. Also, a capacity building plan should also be able to build a risk assessment understanding so that the vulnerabilities the organization is exposed to can be mitigated. So, unlike an awareness, capacity building is more in-depth. We also have incident response and reporting. So, an ideal capacity building should be able to give employees knowledge on how to document an incident, how to report it. When a data breach occurs within an organization, how do you report it to the NDPC? Do you know the procedures? Do you have a step-by-step guide? So these are areas that an ideal capacity building should address. So we move on. Privacy policy. Under privacy policy, you need to understand that every organization by law should have their privacy policy on their website, and any mobile application they use, they have to also put in this privacy policy. So a privacy policy is a legal document that outlines how an organization collects, uses, discloses, and manage personal information of data subjects. It serves as a transparent communication tool, informing users about the privacy practice within the organization. So when you have a privacy policy, you should be able to look at what are the key elements that should be on the privacy policy. First, there should be an introduction, which gives an overview of the purpose and scope. Also, you should also explain the kind of information you collect. Take, for instance, email addresses, contact information, location data. You should be able to explain the kind of information you collect. Then, the methods you use in collecting this information. You have to describe how the organization collects this data. Is it through website form? Is it through cookies? Is it through user account? Because if your privacy policy falls short of the requirements of the Data Protection Act, your organization may be penalized or be sued. So you also need to itemize the purpose of data collection. Why are you collecting data? So there have to be a clarification of the purposes for which data is collected. Then the data use and sharing, because every organization needs data for marketing purpose, needs data for making business decisions. So you have to be able to let people who are interfacing with your application understand if you share their data with third-party vendors. Then the rights of the data subject have to be on your privacy policy, because as a data subject, there are certain rights and obligations data controllers and data processors are supposed to fulfill. Take, for instance, the right of rectification. Many a times, some of the data that organizations have collected in the past had errors. You would see a driver's license having a male gender, whereas the owner of that license is a female, vice versa. So every data subject have the right to correct their records when it is not correct, and also update it when it is incomplete. So there are many rights which the data subject is supposed to enjoy through the passage of the Data Protection Act. Then the security measures you've put in place, for example, confidentiality, integrity, encryption, you have to state it in your privacy policy. Then your retention period, which is a statement telling the public and people who interface with your application how long you will retain their data. Every data has a specific span, a lifespan you should hold that data. There are data that you may hold for life, but there are some data that should be held for less than 2 years, some 5 years, some 10 years, depending on the law guiding the use of that data. So you need to understand that. Then cookies and tracking technology. If you have cookies embedded on your website to be able to give users a personalized experience, you have to state it on your privacy policy. And also, when there are changes to your privacy policy, you have to also update it. So, of course, you have to put the date that privacy policy was last updated and contact information like the data protection officer email address in case people need to reach out. So, these are the basic components. It doesn't mean that you cannot have more content than what I just explained, but this should be the minimum every privacy policy should be able to contain. So we move to compliance directives to employees, contractor, and agent because the act now says data controllers, data processors have to give employees, contractors, and agents some actionable items to fulfill. So I will explain. So the data protection compliance directives are guidelines and instructions provided to employees, contractors, agents, and other individuals associated with an organization to ensure that they handle personal data in accordance with the Data Protection Act. These directives are crucial for maintaining the privacy and security of data collected. So, what are those areas these directives should address? It should clearly outline the fundamental principle of data protection, such as transparency, purpose limitation, data minimization, accuracy, storage limitation, integrity, and confidentiality. Also, the legal basis for processing. So you have to specify the legal basis for processing personal data. There's always a misconception that data can only be processed when consent is given. That is not the truth, it's the half truth. There are instances whereby data may be processed for public interest or public use in case of national security. So there are different legal bases for processing data. Consent is just one. And especially when you have direct marketing, you have to be able to freely give the data subject the permission to grant you consent, and the data subject should be able to withdraw his or her consent at will. So the data collection and processing procedures also have to be specific. And how do you intend to handle sensitive data? So you provide specific instructions on the handling of sensitive data. For example, biometric data. Biometric data is sensitive, same with the health records. So you have to understand that there should be specific instruction in handling this. Take for instance, a bank wants to issue a customer a PIN. There should be a specific instruction with that debit card or credit card telling the customer the do's and don'ts. So when you collect sensitive information like people's sexual orientation, people biometrics, people ethnicity records, people religious belief or political affiliations, they have to be clear instruction on the procedures of managing these records. Also, the safeguards for preventing unauthorized access, such as the use of encryption, access control, authentication, you have to clearly state it. Then you also have to outline how personal data will be shared with third parties. So this includes contractors, service providers, and you must constantly educate employees on the right of data subjects. So you have to evidence that your employee understands all the rights of data subjects, and data subjects should be able to rectify their data, erase their record where applicable, you understand, and also request for restriction on the processing of their personal data where applicable. Then you also need to have a clear instruction on how they can report data breach, the procedures, and emphasize the importance of ongoing training and awareness within your ecosystem, and communicate the organization commitment to monitoring and auditing, and of course instruct employees on the importance of maintaining accurate records so that the request for rectification will be minimized. Another key area that data controllers and data processors are expected to fulfill with the new compliance guidance is availability of data protection officers. So it is crucial that organization designate a staff as the data protection officer. However, to ensure compliance is organization wide and not restricted to the domicile department of the designated staff, it is good that every department within an organization nominates at minimum one staff. This nominated staff will form a data protection team for the organization. Paraventure, the current data protection officer leaves the business, the knowledge and skill is still within the ecosystem. But if you've just nominated one person from, say, IT, legal, or compliance, at some point, the person may leave and all that knowledge and wealth of experience will go with the person. So, in order to play safe, it is ideal you have a data protection team. So, you can nominate a staff from finance, you can nominate a staff from HR, you can nominate a staff from customer service, you can nominate a staff from admin, you can nominate a staff from IT, nominate a staff from legal, and every other department your ecosystem have, so that peradventure the staff you nominated decides to leave or something happens, the ecosystem still has that knowledge, still has that experience. So these are things you should take note of. So before I delve into other areas, I'm going to quickly run through the uh, ratings organizations should look at for from the NDPC based on the template for assessment. So for you to get your compliance for 2023, because you do your compliance in arrears now, you have to look at 100 points will be available for organizations. But how will these 100 points be allocated? So the compliance metrics under the National Data Protection Program, NADAP whitelist, are rated as follows. So 15 points is allocated to organizations who have verifiable evidence of conformity with data protection principles and lawful basis for data processing. Take, for instance, your privacy policy meets the requirements, your privacy notice meets the requirements, your consent form meets the requirements, your visitor management meets the requirements, then you'll be allocated 15 points for meeting that requirement. And you have to reference section 24 and section 25 of the Data Protection Act to see the full compliance requirement. The next also has 15 points, which is accountability and prompt responsiveness to regulatory processes. For example, timely filing of your compliance audit return. So you look at section 24, section 6, subsection D, section 24, 61. That gives you an idea of what you should look at for in terms of compliance. And that is 15 points. So the next has 10 points, which is sensitization of data subject on data subject rights. This falls under awareness. I've explained this earlier on. So you look at section 25, 34 to 38. So that's 10 points. So you have to evidence that you have sensitized your data subject, your customers, on their rights. You get it. Then 5 point is allocated to appointment of a verifiable competent data protection officer. So if you have a verifiable competent data protection officer, you will be allocated 5 points. So 5 points is also allocated to engagement of a data protection compliance organization, and section 33 talks about that. Then filing of compliance audit returns is also allocated 10 points. Data privacy impact assessment is allocated 10 points. And you look up for section 28 to get what that stipulates. Then we also have accessible and functional internal remediation mechanism. How do you respond to security issues, cyber threats, data breaches, unforeseen downtime? 10 points. Then global acceptable information security certification like ISO 2701 and every other certification that is globally recognized. So if your organization have some form of ISMS certification, PCI DSS certification, you'll be allocated 10 points. So continuous awareness, capacity building for staff, contractors, that gives you 10 points. So if you do the total sum up, you to hit 100 points. So what you should understand is you can self-assess your organization, but it is the requisite law you should look at for the Data Protection Act when you're doing that self-assessment. And the external assessment will be done by the Data Protection Compliance Organization. So looking at this template to assessment, you can be able to tell yourself, how ready is my organization for compliance? So you need to look at that and do the right thing. So we continue. So the deadline for compliance is March 31st, 2024. So what that means is that you can start filing your compliance audit returns now, and you have between now and March 31st, 2024 to get that sorted out. Then take for instance, an organization decides to default. Is there any penalty? Of course, there are penalties for non-compliance. For organizations that process high volume of data, they will be regarded as data controllers and data processors of major importance. So people who fall into that threshold will be like the commercial banks, the telcos, the insurance companies, some ministries, department, and agency of relevance. Those people will process high volume of data subject records. So if they violate the Data Protection Act, they could be penalized as high as 10 million naira or 2% of their annual gross revenue, whichever is higher. So for smaller organizations like SMEs, startup, NGOs that are not of major importance, the level of data they process is not too significant, they will be penalized 2 million naira or 2% of their annual gross revenue, whichever is higher. So you don't want to violate the law. And the best thing you can do now is start your compliance process. And you can't do that on your own. You have to seek the service of a data protection compliance organization. And Flowlist is here to help you out. Our website is on the chat box. You can see our pool of clients so that you can get your compliance process right. Don't forget the deadline is March 31st. So the earlier you start reaching out to Flowlist to assist you with these processes, the better for you. So you need to understand that. So the other key things I will also want to explain so that every participant can also have some level of knowledge. One is the kind of data organizations do collect. It's good you understand because people really feel they don't collect data. So I'm going to be explaining some kind of data organizations have collected over the years. One is basic identifiers like name, address, date of birth, name. These are basic identifiers. We also have contact information, email addresses, phone numbers, mailing address that fall under contact information. Then we have demographic information like gender, ethnicity, what tribe are you? Are you male? Are you female? Those are demographic information. Employment information, job title, employment history, salary details. Then health and medical information, medical history, health conditions, prescriptions, biometric data, which you have fingerprint, facial recognition. Then you have location data. Take for instance, Uber, Bolt, they collect location data, GPS coordinate, location tracking data. Then you also have online identifiers like IP addresses, cookies, device ID for the mobile apps. You understand? They collect your IP address, they collect your device ID. Then social media information, user profile, education information, your education records, relationship status, especially for social media. Are you single? Are you married? Are you in a relationship? So preference, hobbies, then you have communication data, for example, email and call logs. So you need to understand, as an organization, do we collect such records? And you have to categorize it appropriately, you understand. That's where you do your data mapping. Then we have the technical measures that organizations are expected to put in place, one of which is encryption, access control, firewall and network security, regular security audits, data backup, secure development, patch management, secure configuration, data masking and anonymization, endpoint security, incident response plan, security training and awareness, physical security measures. And it's very important I highlight physical security measures because over the last few years, a lot of people have shied away from physical security as a data protection control. So you need to understand that physical security is a data protection control. Take, for instance, somebody walks into an organization, the person is not profiled, the person is not invited, or the person make use of another staff access card to gain access to the building, you can begin to see that data is already being breached to some extent. So you also need to ensure that your applications have two-factor authentication because there's a rise in identity theft. So there should be a control like 2FA, you understand, or MFA, multi-factor authentication, to address all these identity theft related issues. Then for grievance redress, data subjects should be able to reach out to an organization where they have need to. So your data protection officer details should be on your website or the desk office for data protection, and people should be able to do some of the basic data subject access request processes on your website. You understand? So those are the key areas. So we are going to take questions. If you have any question you want us to address, drop it on the chat box so we can address those questions. And once again, I appreciate everyone who has made out time to attend this virtual training. We are indeed grateful for your patience and your prompt timing for this program. Feel free to ask any question. We are here to address those questions so that you can be well informed. Thank you, everyone. So we are waiting for questions so that we can be able to address those questions. Okay, we have a question. If a company gives out my data wrongly, what is the penalty? First of all, you need to ask yourself, have I ever used that company's service? Because don't just raise an alarm that is false. Maybe you've used the company service and you forgot. First, you need to ask yourself genuinely, have I used this company service? Have I used a service, maybe a third party of this organization uh, has processed my record before? So you have to first of all be sure that first of all this company has never had any interaction with you and you've never had an interaction with them or their third parties. Because some third parties in their privacy policy may tell you they share your records with certain data controllers and data processors to meet up with their obligations. So you have to first of all do that. If you now discover that, okay, uh, it is in no way close to the fact that I've done business with this organization, the first thing you need to do is reach out to the organization and request to be opted out from their mailing list. If they fail to complete this process within 30 days, you can report to the NDPC. The next question is, how often should a company carry out audits? Based on the current Data Protection Act, audit returns are filed annually. But for you to be very secured from fraudsters and cyber threats, you shouldn't leave your audit for the annual returns. You can be doing self assessment on a quarterly basis so that you are above board. But when you wait for 1 year to get your systems checked, it creates so many loopholes. So you need to understand that. Keep the questions coming so that we can address those areas you have concern. Okay, if a microfinance bank engage your service for audit compliance, is it going to be yearly and at what cost? Okay, you can reach out to us via our email. I'm going to drop our email. Information like cost cannot be disclosed on a virtual session like this because we need to understand your scope of work. You understand? So I'm going to drop our official email. You can send a mail. We're also going to drop our WhatsApp number uh, so that you can be able to reach out to us. So somebody asked the question, what is the difference between data protection and cyber security? I get this too often. Well, they are not the same. First thing you should know is that they are not the same. Data protection focus on ensuring data integrity, whereas cybersecurity takes a broader approach by focusing on all digital network and systems that collect, transmit, process, and store information. They complement each other, no doubt, but you need to understand that cybersecurity consists of technologies, people, and processes. And in the long run, you should look at endpoint security, identity and access management, network security, data security, application security, forming the bedrock of cybersecurity. If your privacy policy is on your website, do you need a separate documented policy? You need to be specific. Privacy policies are expected to be on your website. However, there are other procedures you should have. You understand? A privacy policy is just one of the policy documents you need. You understand? There are several other policy documents you need. You understand? The basic one that will come up is password policy. Of course, you can't put your password policy on your website. You understand? Because it should be like an internal document for your employees and third party vendors. So there are other documented documents, documented procedures you should have. Keep the questions coming so that we can be able to address all those areas of concern. Okay, if an organization refuses to clear my data from their system, is there any penalty? Of course, on the NDPC website, you can report issues like this. So I'm going to drop the website of the regulatory body, NDPC. When you go to the website, there's a section where data subject can make such formal reports and they'll be penalized. You understand? So let me drop that website. It's ndpc.gov.ng. So on the website, there's a section where you can make such formal reports. Okay, drop a list of services you carry out. Okay, there are so many services we do. I would prefer you reach out to us to really understand how we can be of help to you. But I will mention some. One is vulnerability and penetration testing. One is policy drafting. One is capacity building. We also have implementation of ISO standards. So there are so many services we can do, but you have to be specific. Please reach out to us, drop a WhatsApp or send a mail, and we'll get back to you so that we know what you clearly want. You understand? Mm. And not to forget, we are also licensed by NDPC, the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, to assist with issues relating to data protection compliance. Okay. You will be able to get this on our social media handle so that you can have a preview of the video, you understand, and that will give you an insight on what you just asked, which is run through the basic requirement of privacy policy. We've explained this earlier on, so just do a playback and you have that explained. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you've enjoyed this content, be rest assured that other content will be better. So don't forget to subscribe. And all our social media handles, TikTok, Instagram, follow us because we have content that can help you so that you are more informed and your organization is more resilient. Okay, when there's a breach, what is the best practice to address through the DIPCO or through the regulator? Okay, so when you experience a data breach, the first thing you should think of is how do we communicate to the data subject? That should be the first thing. That's not the only thing. But why is the first thing is if customers' records are in the hands of fraudsters, they will begin to receive unsolicited text message, emails, and they may even be defrauded. So the first thing is communication. How do we communicate this to the data subject? That should be the first thing that should come at the back of your mind. How do we save our customers from being defrauded? Take, for instance, a bank is hacked. You have emails, phone numbers, that are already in the hands of a fraudster, the fraudster will begin to communicate with these guys. They need their PIN, they need their OTP. So you need to communicate first. Then, after you've been able to resolve how to communicate, the next thing you look at is how do we do due diligence, investigate the root cause of this. And don't forget, you must report to the NDPC within 72 hours. So between when you discover the data breach and 72 hours, you must be able to communicate to the customers, to the employees, you understand? Because sometimes employees may also be victims. So you communicate with them, you start your investigation. What went wrong? So when you have information of what went wrong, when you are not communicating with the NDPC, the regulatory body, you have some information. But I would advise you get your DPCO to advise you at this point. Because if you don't know how to report a data breach, you will expose your organization so bad. So it's just like your legal counsel. No matter the crime you've committed, if you have a sound lawyer, you will get a better a better penalty. You understand? So you try to communicate with your DPCO to give you a formal way of presenting this that will have some form of damage control. You understand? Then don't exceed the 72 hours threshold. I hope I gave you an insight. You understand? on how to resolve this. So can you submit your recent ISO 270 to NDPR? To NDPR. You don't NDPR is Nigeria Data Protection Regulation. So you don't submit anything to NDPR. NDPR itself is kind of old. It is the Data Protection Act. So maybe you have to rephrase that question. Mm. You have to rephrase that question. NDPR is Nigeria Data Protection Regulation. I want to assume you are talking or referring to the Nigeria Data Protection Commission. You understand? So the next one is there any data breach reporting? Of course, there's a data breach reporting format, and all our clients have that format implemented. So there's a format. If you don't have the format, you could make the regulatory body see you as incompetent when reporting data breach. There's a format. Can we engage you as our DPCO? Yes, reach out to us. Of course, yes, you can engage us as your DPCO. Just reach out to us. Our website is www.flowliz.com. floliz.com. Reach out to us or send us a WhatsApp and we'll begin the conversation. Don't forget, compliance deadline is March 31st, 2024. So you have to take action. So I think we've done justice to this topic. If you have been informed and you've learned a whole lot, subscribe and go to Instagram, follow us, go to TikTok, follow us so that you can be well informed. Of course, if you've engaged us, your filing will be done. But don't forget, this is a new filing cycle. You may have done last year, so it has to be renewed. Is the act applicable to foreign companies? The answer is obviously yes, when they process the records of Nigerians. You understand? You can't be operating in Nigeria and fail to file a report because you're a multinational. Even the cross-border data transfer highlights some of these issues. So a multinational operating in Nigeria also have to file their report through a DPCO. Yes, the answer is yes. So thank you everyone and enjoy your weekend. But don't forget, you have to subscribe. If you like this content, be rest assured better are coming. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend and stay data protection conscious.